Well, it's lovely to see everybody here. Thank you all so much for coming. It's great to be all together. The month has gone very quickly. Some of you were here for the last webinar, so I'm delighted to welcome you back and also to welcome some new people in as well. And we have quite a few people who are going to listen to the audio. It seems that Monday is not easy for everybody, so maybe I will try for the next one maybe to change it to a Tuesday. Maybe we will swap it around a little bit to make it a little bit easier. Okay, just before we start, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself in the chat, that's always nice. Just maybe say who you are and where you are from. And also, I would really like to know what attracted you to the webinar this evening. What was it that interested you? What are you hoping to find? What are you looking for? And I will try to answer your queries. Hello, we've just had someone joined. Now, I can only see the name Feriel, so I'm not sure what your first name is. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hello.
Hello.
My first name is Ramdani.
Arundini. Oh, well, it's so nice to meet you. Thank you so much. You can feel free to put your camera on if you want. In fact, the recording is just the audio, so that we are not recording the video. So feel free to put your camera on. It's lovely for everybody to see each other, to see the faces, if you would like. Okay. Great. So please do introduce yourself in the chat. Who are you? Where are you coming from? And what are you hoping to get from this evening? Okay, so we're going to join in. We're going to start now, and I would just like you, please, to turn off your microphones just for the audio. It is better. So I hope that you have your workbook. So you should have a workbook like this, and we will be doing some writing in there. Okay. So my idea for this evening is to talk about a topic that I think is probably the most important thing that you can think about when you want to make a big change. But before we do that, we need to ask the big question that we talked about in the previous webinar, which is, what do you want? Now, if you haven't thought about that yet, I would suggest that is the first thing to think about. What do you want? What do you really, really want? So when you have really thought about that, probably you want to change something. Now, that might be something small, it might be something big, it might be something about the way you do your job. It can be many, many aspects of your life. So we're talking today about, well, how can we do that change? And for many people who come for coaching are looking for this kind of change. They're looking for a way to create change in their lives. Now, what I would like you to do is, in your workbook, make a note of what do you think do you need to do to make a big change in your life? What do you think you need to do? So just write a quick note. What do you think that you need to do to make a big change in your life? And if you would like to share that in the chat, then please do. Welcome to those people who have just arrived. You're very welcome. We've just started. So if you have your book, your workbook, we're just looking at the very first question about what do you think that people need to do if they want to have change in their lives. So please do go ahead and put in the chat. What do you think? What do you think that you need when you want to change something? So Linda says, yeah, great. Aligning goals and actions and habits. Yes, habits, really important. To change our habits. Great. Any other ideas? What do we need to do? Now, I coached some sixth form students who are 17, 18-year-olds last week. And I asked them the same question. And it was very interesting because they gave the same answers that many of my coaching clients give as well at the start. And the number one thing that they say is hard work. Hard work is what you need. Hard work. And I said, oh, what do you mean? And they said, well, we should work 10 hours a day. Wow, 17 years old, 10 hours a day. That's a lot. But this is often what we think. We think that hard work is really the key. And of course, hard work is important. But what I'm going to say today is that it's not the only thing. We might also say, I think I just spotted on the chat goes very fast when it moves, so I sometimes miss things. So do excuse me if I don't see your comment. Yes, so Linda said consistency and discipline. Sorry, Hadil said consistency and discipline and aligning goals with action. Absolutely. Stop thinking about the change and start doing it. Yes, taking that action is just so important, isn't it? And Amy says, yes, be very clear about the change you want to make and the results you are looking for. These are wonderful. And Sophie, be active and courageous. I love that one. Now, Sophie, hold on to that because you used the word be. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, is what do we need to be? Because we often get into the action, and we need the action, but we also need the be. What are we going to be? How are we going to change the way that we are? So all of these doing words, doing the action, starting, of course, we do need to do that. It's very important. But when we start to really think about this idea of being, it gives us another dimension to that change. So today, what I would like you to think about is the problem with our to-do lists. How many of you have a to-do list? I always have one on the go. So, yes, and I have to say, I actually love my to-do list. Don't tell anyone, but I do love my to-do list. But there's nothing wrong with a to-do list, except when we get stuck in the to-do list and it becomes a never-ending to-do list. And some of my clients have come to me saying, I feel like I'm on a hamster wheel, the hamster wheel that goes round and round, always on that wheel of a to-do list. It's never-ending, never finishes. I'm always on the go, but not really feeling like I'm moving forward. And often what happens is that people can get stuck on their to-do list and they're taking action, but they're not seeing the transformation that they want. And this is what we're trying to address today. So we're going to look at the cycle of change, the very traditional cycle of change. And this is the classic model that we've used for project management, for professional development. I'm sure, Sophie, you use it in personal training as well. This is the model of change that we have used for many, many years, decades. In education, we've used it for, I don't know how long, forever. And again, there's nothing particularly wrong with it, but I think we can improve it. So the cycle of change, if you look in your workbook, you'll see that you have, and the next little part is all about the 4 stages of the traditional cycle of change. So the first stage is identifying the needs. So identifying needs is always that's the first point that we do. And then we move to making a plan. And we plan to fill the gaps typically. So we look at what the needs are, those are the gaps, and then we look at what do we need to do, we plan to fill those gaps. And when we are thinking that, we are thinking usually that we are missing something, we are lacking something. And this I will come back to because this I have a problem with. Then number 3 is implement. So that's the doing. We go straight to the doing. And then finally, we reflect. We think, how did that go? Yes, maybe we'll change that. Maybe we'll change this. We embed the learning and then we start the cycle again. So this is the traditional cycle of learning, of professional development, project management, of planning. And we see that in many, many different industries. And of course, it has its use. I'm not saying it's not useful. It is useful. But there's a big flaw because it's very systematic and logical, which is fine. But the problem is that 95% of our actions are automatic and subconscious. So this is a problem. Because if 95% of our actions are actually from our subconscious, this kind of needs identification, which is very logical, doesn't touch that. It doesn't touch what Linda talked about, habits and how we put something into our subconscious and actually change those daily habits. Sheila, yes, the workbook, I'm hoping that you've had it in an email today. If you haven't, I will have to send it to you afterwards. Sorry, I don't have an assistant online with me right at the moment. But I will tell you what the questions are as they come up. So I'm just now going to look at the 3 big problems with this model. So the first one is this, yes, that 95% of our actions are automatic and subconscious. This model does not address that. So that's a big problem. The second problem is the actual needs identification, because when we're looking at the gaps in performance, we are isolating skills. So you can imagine that, for example, with a new teacher, I've worked with many new teachers, and when we ask new teachers, so what do you want to improve? And they say, I need to improve my assessment or my behavior management, and they tell you a skill that they need to improve. And so then we isolate that skill, we address that skill, and we continue with the cycle. So that's fine, except we are ignoring the very essential parts that we know drive our behavior. The first thing are our beliefs. What do we believe that we can do? If that teacher is saying to themselves, I can't control the class, the problem is not the technique. The problem is that teacher needs to believe first that they can control the class. So the belief is so important. The second thing that we must have is we must acknowledge our emotions. How do you feel about that? And maybe the teacher in this example, who doesn't have good classroom control, is feeling very stressed because a class that is out of control is not a happy place. So that teacher is also feeling very stressed. So you can see there's a belief, I can't control the class, I feel stressed. I feel anxious, I feel worried, whatever that emotion is. Maybe there's also a cultural aspect to it. And by culture, I don't mean in terms of countries, but within an organization. Maybe that teacher, for example, doesn't feel very supported by their colleagues. Maybe that teacher feels a bit isolated. It could be lots of things. Usually it will be, if someone is in a stressed position in an organization, it's usually because they don't feel that they are heard. They don't feel that they are visible. Or they don't feel that they are important and doing important work. It might be that someone is actually, they're just thinking about being busy all the time. They're in a busy trap. You know, that kind of phrase where you ask somebody, how are you? And they say, oh, I'm so busy. I'm so busy. And the busyness is the block. So it could be that. So when we're looking at those gaps of skills, what we must also do is look at those other things, the beliefs, the emotions, the culture, and also these other ideas about, well, I'm too busy. I will do that when? I will do that in September, when I have finished my course, for example. When we are adding in those blocks, that is not appearing on our cycle of change. The cycle of change does not look for that. It just looks for skills gaps. It also doesn't look for skills potential. It doesn't look for the potential. So, and I think that looking for the potential is where we need to start. So I gave you quite a lot of information there. I hope that makes sense. Are there any questions about that? Or any comments? So Hadil says that yes. And I think, Hadil, you're a teacher, aren't you? I think. Have I remembered correctly? And I think for teachers, when we're thinking about how we're teaching groups, and it's very similar in lots of professions. Yes. So for teachers, I think we can see this very clearly in our teaching work, and of course, and in coaching, it's really vital, I think. Okay, so let's look at the third problem with this cycle of change. The third problem that I feel is in the implementation, so the doing. Yes, we must take action. Yes, we need to move forward. We need to do the things, but we also must become that person. So for the teacher example, imagine you do all these things, you put everything in place, but you've got to become that confident teacher. You've got to believe that you can be that confident teacher. You've got to feel like a confident teacher. And then you can start acting like a confident teacher. So it's much more than just the doing. The doing can take you so far, but it can actually feel quite frustrating because you can do the things, but you don't step into that. You don't become that person that you want to be. And what happens is when we think about becoming the person that we want to be, we also have many benefits of this because it accelerates the change that we want. You imagine that teacher. It really visualizes what a confident teacher looks like, really visualizes what do confident teachers do, and starts to do that, starts to feel like that confident teacher. Their progress will be very quick. So it accelerates that change. And also it magnifies the impact of everything. And again, with our teacher example, you don't need to tell that teacher, well, stand up straight, shoulders back, look confident, smile at the children. They will do that. You don't have to give them a list because they have stepped into it. They have become that confident teacher. This way of working, this way of changing is so much more motivating and it feels easier. It's amazing how this is such a different way to manage change. We also take out the overwhelm because we don't have this list of I must do this, I must do that, which becomes very overwhelming. Because when we're thinking about who we need to be, then the decisions become much easier. I'm not saying it's an easy process, but it's definitely easier. And I'll give you an example. As lots of you know, I have a podcast. And before starting the podcast, I didn't know anything about podcasting. And I listened to a few podcasts and I knew that was what I wanted to do. And I started to write a list. Well, I had 2 pages of things to do. My list was a disaster. Looked at it and went, oh no, I'm not doing this. This is just way, way too overwhelming. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to try a different way. I'm going to decide right now that I am a podcast host. I'm going to step into that role. What do they do? What's the most important thing they do? And I thought, well, they get a guest. They have a guest. So I called my friend Helen in the UK and I said, will you be my first guest on my podcast? And she said, yeah, fine, no problem. She came on my podcast. I didn't have a microphone. We did it just on Zoom. It was very simple, really basic. I made loads of mistakes. She was a wonderful guest. I was lucky. And what was amazing was in 3 days, I started my podcast. It wasn't perfect, but I was a podcast host. I became that podcast host because then I decided that that's what I was going to be. I stepped into it. And because I did that, I knew what the most important thing to do was, and that was to have a guest. Yes, I needed podcast art. I needed a nice part of my website. There were so many other things that I needed, but the most important was to have a guest, record it, publish. That's what I did. So you can see how you can accelerate your progress very quickly by doing this. I'll give you another example. With many of my clients, a lot of them come to me with talking about leadership, and often they want to step into a different role. So they want to step often into a more senior role, maybe on a board or in some kind of C-suite role. And for them, they're thinking, well, maybe I should do this, maybe I should do that. They have a list. And we then work on, well, who do you need to be as that leader? And in fact, what they find is that they start being that kind of very senior leader in their current position. And what happens? They go for jobs and they get them because they've become that senior leader already. They've already stepped into that. So again, it accelerates the progress very, very quickly. Okay, time for you to do a little bit of work now. So if you find in your book the part 2, so this is called Reflect. So this is a little bit of thinking work for you. So for many of my clients, I would say the biggest mistake I see most people making is that when they identify the problem, it is this needs identification problem. Often they will say things like, well, I have a time management problem. I need to plan my week better. Okay. Maybe that is the problem. Maybe that is part of the problem. But often then what we need to do is go deeper and find, well, what are the problems? What is it? What is the problem beneath that? What is the belief? What is stopping you? So what I would like you to do, it's just an experiment. If you can't think of anything, don't worry. That's fine too. Just think about what maybe you might want to think about tomorrow. You can do it tomorrow. So in your book, I would like you to write down one area that you want to improve at the moment. So one thing, just one thing that you want to improve. Won't do everything all in one go. So just write down one thing and then dig a little deeper and think, what is really stopping you from finding the solution or from really implementing the solution? Because I'm sure you have the solution. That I'm sure. Now that might be a difficult question. If it is, don't worry. Don't judge. Just notice, that was difficult or that is difficult. Just notice. If it is difficult, you can also ask yourself, what are the reasons that you are giving yourself for not changing? So what is that little voice? Because we all have that little voice. What is that little voice saying that's stopping you from making that change? Now that could be many things. I'm not going to suggest what they are because everybody is going to be different. So just give me a little thumbs up if you've managed to write down a few little things. And you can do it. I think for those of you with the cameras off, you can still give me a wave or a thumbs up. Great. Thank you. Oh, yes. Oh, I love seeing those, the little thumbs popping up. Great. Okay, so what I would like you to do now is think about the next part. What could happen for you if you addressed those issues? What could happen for you? Not just with that one problem, but what could happen for you if you addressed that problem? What would it change for you in all areas of your life? So Hadil has said, for my part, it's procrastination. I overthink a lot, and currently I need to start working on my final year project. Okay, great. So now that you've identified that, Hadil, what would it change for you if you addressed that? Oh, great, Sheila, you've found it. Brilliant. So Sheila, we're on part 2, which is probably about page 4 in the workbook, if you can find it. Let me know if you can't. Now, as I said, don't worry if the answers don't come. It's okay. These questions, these coaching questions, take time. And often the best answers will be the answer you have tomorrow morning when you're having your coffee and you're suddenly, oh yeah, I know now. Okay, the answers come later. Just let it start the thinking. I think sometimes we want answers very quickly, very immediately, and we want the best answer right now. But it takes time, and that's okay. That's it. It's more than okay. It's great. So just note your thoughts, let them come, and write them down, and maybe tomorrow just come back to that, because that is probably the most important question for you today. What could it change in your life? Because that will give you the motivation to really make those changes. So the last question, Sheila, is on the part, it's called part 2, reflect. And the second question is, what could happen for you in all areas of your life if you addressed those issues? Now, is there anyone who would like to just share in the chat what they've noted there, or what they've started to note? It's a lot to think about all in one go. So Linda says, so much of my problem is in my head. Yes. So it's difficult to change because the current situation is comfortable. Yes. Yeah. So what would it change if you were to change that? How could that change things for you? So this is where you have to imagine the future. There's a lot of coaching, in fact, is about imagining. There's lots of work using imagination because our imagination is so powerful. And when we can use that imagination, that's that 95% that the cycle of change doesn't touch. And our imagination is a very powerful motivator, and it guides us. And it gives us that path that we need. So imagine, use your imagination there. Okay, we're going to move on to the part 3 now. But I'm really would like you to come back to that question because it's such an important one. So part 3 is all about becoming the best version of you. So, and this takes us to the essential thing. And I would like you to remember that there are 3 parts to this. So what can we change? We must remember this. What can we change? Number 1, we can't change the universe. We can't change night and day. We can't change many things on a daily basis. We can't change other people. Now, this is it's a tricky one, isn't it? We can't change other people. We can't change other people's actions. That's their responsibility. It's their business. We can't change it. We might try to influence it, but we can't change. It has to be their decision. We can only change ourselves. And a quote that it is not my quote, but I use it all the time, I've adopted it, is, we are the only problem we will ever have, and we are the only solution. I love this quote. We are the only problem that we will ever have, and we are the only solution. So if we take that, what that does, if we truly take that, and it's a challenge, I find it a challenge because it requires us to take complete responsibility. We can't blame anybody else. Now, it doesn't mean that, of course, other people may do things that make life difficult or hurt us, but what we can control is our reaction to that. We can only control that. So we are the only problem and we are the only solution. So this means that when we want to change something, it has to come from us. We have to take responsibility, but it also gives us an amazing freedom. It gives us such a liberty. And those of you in France, we love our liberté. So we love that freedom, and it's so exciting. So it's when we take that responsibility, it gives us a freedom to make the changes. Now, those changes may not come fast. It may take a long time. And we can see as we look at the world today that there are many situations at the moment where people may well feel that they can't make big changes. But each one of us we can control the way we respond. This is not about positive thinking, and I think this is a really important point. I'm not a fan of positive thinking, because positive thinking, life is not always great. Positive thinking is only gets us so far. So this is not about finding the silver lining. This is really about finding how we can take responsibility and how we can see our own potential to make the change that we want to do. So what I would like you to do, again on the third part, the next question is a really important one, because who do you need to become? And you will notice that I've put in the present tense, I am. So now what I want you to do is to really step into that. Who are you? Now, Sophie already gave us two wonderful words right at the beginning. I think she said courageous was one of them. And Sophie, remind me, what was the second one? Active. So courageous and active was Sophie's. So Sophie, you can start yours. I am courageous and active. So I would like everybody, please, to write down, I am. So who do you need to become to see this change that you want? Who do you need to become? Not the to-do list. Don't worry about the to-do list. The to-do list will come naturally. That's the easy bit. It's who do you need to be? So write down and just write. It's not an English exam. Just write in your own language as well. Please write in your own language. It's much, much better. And write who do you need to become, and write your list of who you are in this next best version of you. And you might use the word more. So I know, for example, I know Sophie, and I know she already is courageous. So she may well write, I am more courageous. So you can use the word more. Acknowledge the strengths that you already have. You have that already. So I am more courageous. Okay? Okay, I'm just going to be quiet now and let you write that list. And if you'd like to share any of it in the chat, please do. It gives other people ideas. So Sheila has said more focused. Yeah, great. So more focused. More passionate, more driven and consistent. Great. I love that. The more passionate. When we've got passion for what we do, that is such a game changer. Those of you who have followed me for some time know that I talk a lot about purpose. And for me, passion and purpose are very closely linked. So yes. Yeah, great. More successful. So Kaori, can you tell us what do you mean? The word successful. Can you tell me what does that mean for you? More what? What qualities do you want to pull up? What qualities do you want to nurture in yourself for that success? More confident, more positive about things. Oh, these are wonderful, and it's so inspiring to look at other people's lists, because they certainly inspire me, and so thank you for sharing. It's very generous, and it's what's great about having these webinars. Actually, is sharing these ideas. So keep writing your list. Don't worry if it's very, very long. Keep going. Keep thinking all the things. Is there any more? Could you do something else? What do you want to do? And keep coming back to this idea. What's important to you? What do you want? And be very clear on what do you want, not what does anyone else want. Make sure it's your list. So now when you look at your list, I like that. Yes, we've got some lovely things here as well. More courageous, helpful, lovely. So when you look at your list, I don't think anybody there said that they needed a title. They didn't say they needed more time. They didn't say they needed more resources, more money. No, this is all about you being. And this is what's great about this. You need the right energy for this. You need the intention, and you need that belief about yourself that you can do this. You don't need to wait for anything. You don't need to wait for that new job. You don't need to wait for that special colleague that's going to help you do this. No, you don't need anything else other than yourself. This all can come from you, and it can start today or tomorrow. Let you start tomorrow. And when I think that if we come back to this idea about you and me as well, I'm talking about we are the only problem that we will ever have, and we are the only solution. Keep coming back to that. Keep coming back to that list. And then we need to make a start. So now we can start on the doing. So now we can come back to our action plan. And what I would like you to do is to think about, okay, look at your list. And think about, well, what is the action that you need to take now to put that into place? Now, there are probably many things. So I would like you for today to write down what's the one thing, just one. What's the one thing that is really inspired from your to-be list? It must be related to your list that you're going to do this week. What's the one thing? So what's the one thing that's going to really take you forward? And when you think about the one thing, some of you might know the book, The One Thing. It's a really great book. And in the book, I can't remember who it's by, sorry, but it's a very interesting book. And it's all about thinking about what's the one thing that's the domino that will have the biggest effect. And I think this is a really useful idea, especially when we're thinking about these big questions. And we can spend a lot of time in the big questions, but then we must get down to action. We must take the action. So what's the one thing? What's the domino that's going to have a big effect? So for me, for my podcasting problem, my domino was to find my one guest, my first guest. That was my domino. So what's your domino? And when you've identified your domino, that's really great because there's no overwhelm. You get off the hamster wheel, find your domino, and focus on that. And at the same time, you're focusing on your to-be list. Has anyone else identified their domino, the one thing? To start early. Interesting. Yeah, yes. I'm going to give up coffee. Yes, because it feels great going down, but makes me feel poorly and impacts my sleep. Yeah, that's an amazing one. So that domino can be something that you think, well, that's quite a small thing, but look at the impact. Impacts my sleep. And so that changes lots of things. So that's a great domino. Identify your domino. And remember, everybody's dominoes are going to be different. Now, there's another message there for the first domino. Trust me, trust myself. Yes, yes. Oh, that's wonderful, wonderful. When we trust ourselves, lots of things can change. Yeah, they're great. Any more dominoes? I love these. Now, I'm just going to give you a little thing to think about, because when we're thinking about all of these wonderful big things and we come to a webinar like this and we finish the webinar and we feel great, we feel motivated, we feel energized, we've got our domino, we're ready to go, and then in a few days' time we think, oh, I don't feel good now. We have a doubt. Think, oh, not sure. It's normal, really normal. Don't worry about those ups and the downs, but come back to your domino, come back to your to-be list, and don't be hard on yourself. Remember, this is life, and there are ups and there are downs, and just come back, notice, there's no judgment. Come back to it. Okay, well, today is a new day. What's my domino for today? And maybe your domino needs to change for that day. So maybe your domino is actually to have a day off, or to have a sleep, or to see a friend, or to go out for a walk. So remember, your domino might change, and think about, what do I need today? What's my domino today? What's the one thing I need for today? I've seen some other great ones coming in as well. So Hadil says, stop multitasking and focusing on one thing at a time. Yes, and that could change a lot of things, couldn't it? Yeah, that's a great domino. And Denis, yes, I have to be the greater supporter of myself. Yes, oh yes. Oh, these are just wonderful. And Amy said, possibly confidence. I think there are lots of things I could probably do if I dared. Yes, yeah. Absolutely. So these dominoes are key, aren't they? They're the key. And when you see, actually, they're very linked to your to be. And that's when we start to have a big difference. That's when we start to see things moving. And that's what I love when I'm coaching people, is that we start to see that things change very quickly. But the changes it's all here. It's all here. The changes are not about increasing your to-do list, making life complicated. No, we're making life easier because we're keeping it simple. Who do we need to be? What do we need to do? That's it. But it's powerful because we're focusing on the right things, and we're focusing on the things that are going to move the needle quickly. And then we can go back and we can think again. So you can see that cycle of change becomes totally different. It's much easier, and it's much more powerful. So I would like you to keep going back to this model. Keep thinking about, who do I need to be this next best version of myself? Keep thinking about, what does that person do? And then come back to those questions and use that as your cycle of change. And you will see that you will find that there are things that change almost that you don't notice. And in fact, I had a client just this week who said to me that coaching is really strange, because you have these small changes in thinking, and then you have these big changes in your life. And that's what's amazing about coaching, I think, the power of it. So what I would like to just ask you to now tell me in the chat, and to tell everybody, what have you gained from today's webinar? What is the one thing that you're going to take away from the webinar today? Maybe something that you've thought about, something that we've just talked about there. What is the one thing that you think you might take away from today's webinar? Oh, that's a great comment there, Rania. Yes, so I'm strong, independent, successful, more organized, free, courageous, generous, confident. And the dominoes: being organized, take action, first step, stop procrastinating, and go out of my comfort zone. Wonderful. I'd say you've got a lot of dominoes there. Should focus more on the to-be list rather than the usual to-do. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm happy because I realise I'm on the good way. Yeah, oh, great. And I really hope that those of you who were here for the January webinar, I hope that you can see how this fits together with what we talked about goals. This is really the next part of it. So in January, we talked about how to set good goals, and we started to think about the to-be list. And this is really the next part of it. And the next webinar in March is going to be how to accelerate that progress. So the 3 webinars really build on each other. So if you are interested in coming to the March webinar, I will be putting up an event in the next couple of days, and I will send you an invitation. So do come along if you are interested. Yeah, great. Okay, so just a little bit before we finish then, about there is an offer for everybody, that you all are invited to have a 30-minute call with me if you would like to talk about this in more detail. If you would like to have a free coaching session on looking at this in more detail, about where you are now, where you want to be, and how that gap you could make that bridge really between where you are and where you want to be, and whether coaching is something that you might be interested in. So if you would like that, it is open for everybody. There are a certain number of slots, so it just depends when I'm available. But you will get an invitation tomorrow, and if you would like to try that, then please do go ahead and book your call. Now, just want to, because some people are not sure really what the difference is between mentoring and coaching. Now, coaching is totally different to mentoring. Mentoring is a way of passing on information. So generally with a mentoring conversation, the person being mentored comes and asks the question, the mentor gives their response. So they share their expertise. In coaching, it's different. In coaching, the coach asks the questions, and it's the person being coached that finds the responses, that finds the answers themselves with the help of the questions. So it's very, very different. It is and they're both useful in different ways. So coaching and mentoring are not quite the same. So just to be clear, because that's a question that I get asked a lot. And coaching is also different in that it creates a space for you to explore things without any judgment. If I'm a mentor, then I might be guiding you towards a certain response. In coaching, it's your response, they're your goals, it's your direction, it's where you are going. So it's a very different kind of discussion. I would really also like to say that with coaching, because we're outside of this cycle of change, we're not looking at adding things to do. We're looking at a deep transformation. We're looking at how you can be the person you want to be, how you can be the leader you want to be, how you can step into being the person that you want to be, and so that you can do the things that you want to do. There is the doing. And also, I hold you accountable for those next steps, because we can talk a good talk, but we have to actually get the doing done as well. So it is those two elements, which is why it's so exciting, which is why I love sharing with people the power of coaching. Okay, well, I think that brings us to an end for this evening. Before you go, do remember to let me know how you found the session. I'd love to have your feedback. It helps me to improve for the next time. Remember that we have our podcast, so if you'd like to listen to any episodes there, it's Leaders Who Love What They Do podcast, so you can find me there. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I think I'm now connected with everybody. I've tried today to make sure I'm connected with everybody who's signed up, but do again keep in touch, send me a message. I'd love to hear how you got on and what you got from this session. So if you have anything else that you want to chat to me about, I will stay online. And other than that, thank you all very much for joining me. And I do hope that you will join me again sometime soon. So thank you.